Hi everyone, it's me, David. I hope you're having a great day. And here is today's philosophical point: changing your perspective. In a couple of previous videos, I've talked about how perspective is the best concept for us understanding what Stoicism is all about. It's also the best concept to understand what is most distinctive of Stoicism. Today I'm going to talk about how to progress as a human being, how to become a better person and move toward virtue. The Stoic view is you have to change your perspective. But how to do it? F.H. Sandbach has a quote that I think you should hear. The road to virtue is that of training the reason to think correctly, end quote. And that's a great way of describing what we're talking about. But beyond just talking about improving our thinking and of improving reason by having it think correctly, we want our perspective to shift, to see the world in the right way, in its true light. So I have a bunch of ideas about how Stoicism helps us to change our perspective. To give my talk a little focus, I want to talk about a situation that many of us are familiar with. You believe you're going to be fired, and it causes you to be fearful. And let's suppose in this case that you have some good reason to believe that you will be fired. The company's not doing well, and there's talk around the office that junior people will probably be let go, and that describes you. Now, for everything that I say here, we should note all of these points will give you some temporary relief if you think this is going to happen next week, or you think it might happen tomorrow. But your perspective will be much better on this point if you've been doing the practices that I'm going to describe over time. And remember, Stoicism is a practice. So most immediately, in terms of improving our thinking, changing our thinking, rather than thinking this will be bad or it will be bad if I'm fired, think it's not preferred that I'm fired, which I think you would also agree to. Now, the reason to do this, quite simply, is because the Stoics believe that fear comes about because we make a judgment about some upcoming event being bad. And so doing this as we think the firing is going to come about will lessen the fear somewhat. But what else? Well, there's a practice of undergoing spiritual exercises, and Marcus Aurelius is quite famous for this. He wrote down quite often principles and doctrines of Stoicism that were relevant to what he was dealing with. So for this situation, here are two principles, two doctrines to write down. The first one is welcome all events. And of course, it's going to be easier to welcome events that you want. If you get a bonus, that's easy to welcome. But you have to learn to welcome events that you don't want to bring about, you don't want to happen. And as with everything else in Stoicism, you're going to start with small. Start with your bus didn't show up when you're going to work. And so I think that's something that everybody can, with a little effort, welcome that. And then when we talk about the second principle that you should make part of your spiritual exercise practice, is this: turn each situation to good account. And so when the bus doesn't come, follow the principle of turn this situation to good account. And with your phone, you could probably get some work done. Send out a few emails, and then by the time the next bus comes, you've done some productive work. Now, when I talk about these spiritual exercises, what you want to do is you want to write down somewhere these two principles and give your own reasons for believing them, for believing these are worthwhile things to do. And the more you find out about Stoicism as a whole, the more reasons you will have to believe that for every situation you should welcome what happens and you should turn each situation to good account. Lastly, let's talk about working on your perspective directly. One thing you're going to do that is a good way of describing it is you're going to enlarge your perspective. And Marcus Aurelius also is famous for this. Look at people that lived in previous times, previous decades, previous centuries, and think about all the difficulties that they had in their day. Dying young, many of their children dying. And so looking at all these events and looking at other people who have been fired, I believe will put your possible firing into better perspective. Now, another way of enlarging your perspective that will be helpful here is intertemporally. Look at your life, look at the past, look at things that have happened to you where you thought this is the worst thing, and then even when something was, according to ordinary standards, a bad event, that you got something good out of it. You learned something, you grew as a person, and also look at the intertemporal lives of other people. Think about all the people that have been fired from their job, and then what did they do a couple years later? They made a comeback. And we can all think of people who have had such experiences. So those are just a few ideas of how you can change your perspective over time, but they certainly don't exhaust all the ways that Stoicism gives us to change our perspective. And so now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments some of your favorite ways of changing your perspective over time. And besides that, here's what I would like you to do. Like, subscribe, check out what I do below, and have a great day. It's up to you.